comfort with traveling and being overseas?
Well, I have to be honest, probably every time I get ready to go on a trip, I always have anxiety. I'm never ever going out just completely relaxed. Every trip is different and every experience. But once you do it, and the other thing that's really amazing is once you put your feet down on the ground and you meet the people, all that just goes away. And it's a very short-lived thing, the anxiety. And once you do it more, you know that once you get there, it'll all fall into place and you begin to trust that.
So like in what ways can you do you look at like a situation and decide where you think you could have like the biggest impact?
Well, that's a great question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so how do you decide where you can have the biggest impact, basically? How do you decide where you're going to put your energies? For me, it's relationships. So when you have a relationship with a group of people or an individual and they have a vision and they want to work with you, well, then you've got something to work with. And then you can begin to move ahead. I started my experience in Africa through a woman I actually met at a training I was attending, and we were there together for a week and we talked a lot. And at the end of it, she said, I have this NGO based out of Calgary, and I'm looking for somebody to go over and assess the needs of youth leaving the orphanage and how we can help them to go on to better lives, because they go on to very, very difficult lives. And would you be willing to go over and do that? And I thought about it and talked it over with my husband, and I invited my daughter to join me and headed off to do it. And so there was already sort of a base and a support system in that. And when you've already got people ready to work with you, you're going to have greater ability to have an impact. Yes?
What changes have you seen inside communities where you have visited with the Canadian Foundation around the world for youth, and how has that empowerment that you have granted these youth or gave them a push affected you?
Okay, well, I'll start with, there's a couple of parts. So I'll start with the impact we've seen. I've worked in two places mainly doing sort of international development work. One is in Zanzibar, and I worked with a youth empowerment organization that's based on Zanzibar, and they're the main contact. And through them, I've met a number of youth. And the organization, you've got to understand, I'm only there maybe 3 months a year, 6 weeks, some years, 3 months, so my impact is like this compared to the impact of the whole organization. So the things that I'm seeing that the work of the organization is doing, bringing other volunteers besides myself in there. Youth have been getting education, which is really critical. There's been a lot of teaching of the English language, which open up opportunities and connections and employment opportunities. They've done partnerships with hotels and restaurants to allow the youth to go in there and get some experience and training. They've set up a transition house where youth come out of the orphanage and they can go and live in this transition house while they work on a plan for what their education and what the future will look like. And they have a support system and a mentor who works with them from the local community. So there's a lot of things that organization is doing, and when I sort of drop in, they usually find some task for me to do around that. And last time I went, they had just rented the house, and so my job was to clean it all out and work with the youth. We had painting parties and that kind of thing. And how has it impacted me? Was the second part. It has made me feel like a world citizen, and the ability to establish those relationships with youth and different people around the world, that connection is just very, very rewarding. It's quite amazing to be able to understand another culture, and you learn so much. And the things you don't even know that you don't know. And those are the kinds of things that I think are really interesting, where you suddenly realize that, gee, from my cultural perspective, this is what this looks like, but from theirs, it's a completely different perspective on that. Good. I mean, last year, one of the main reasons I went back, I wasn't sure I was going to go last year, but I went back because one of the young couples who I'd met over there were getting married, and they wanted me to come to the wedding, and I got to be the bridesmaid and wear, this dress they had made for me, and wait with the bride while the husband came to get her, and to experience a wedding in Zanzibar, a Muslim wedding, it was an amazing experience.
Here's the next question.
Do you feel that supporting communities at home and abroad makes you and the people around you better people?
I hope so. Yeah. You know, I have a tremendous support here locally of people when I even talk about work, you know, my trips. Friends have donated and contributed. I've done fundraisers. My daughter went with me the first year. My husband went with me the next year. My son and husband went with me the following year. But since then, I've just put a call out to friends, saying anybody interested in going. So I've had people join me and come and support it, and people give me things, donations to take in items and clothing and money and all sorts of things. So yes, it's been a wonderful experience. Did you have a question there?
What are some differences you've noticed between abroad and local community groups in terms of their engagement towards building their communities up?
Well, even here locally, you'll find differences between communities, and then when you're abroad, there's quite a bit of differences as well. They're all different, and if you're doing inclusive community development, there isn't like a set model. You respond to the needs of the community. So when I'm in Dar es Salaam, in the outskirts in the rural community, it's a very different kind of process and a very different project that's evolving as we're working with mainly the mothers who are coming out, and they're wanting to develop skills and do some farming, and do sewing, and they meet and talk, and we plan together. And so that's a different kind. We're in Zanzibar, we're working with youth, and they have different needs and interests. And so everyone, if you're doing true to community development, you're responding to the needs of the community, and you're listening to the people, and you're sort of leading from behind. They're sort of setting the direction, and you're supporting that process. Yes?
What is the hardest part of working in communities that aren't abroad, and how do you think it's affected you as a person?
A couple things. One is the language issue can be very challenging at times. The youth in Zanzibar are very fortunate because they have an English school that's part of it, and they're all students that are coming out of that. So their English is actually pretty good. The first year wasn't so good. We really had to work at it, and I've got better Swahili as time's gone on. But and then the other part is what you don't know that you don't know. And a very minor example, but there was this one young boy who I was asking questions about, you know, he just finished his training, and I said, oh, that's great, you finished your education, you know, you got a job, what are you going to be doing? And I was doing what I would do for anybody here, a young person who's starting out, really curious about him, asking him what he was doing. And I could see him sort of, you know, getting tense and upset, and I thought, okay, what's going on? So I thought, okay, I'll just leave it alone. But when one of the other people I was talking to him, he said, well, one of the differences between Canada and here is we don't ask those kinds of questions of people. We don't, you know, do that because it's putting them on the spot, it's being nosy. If they don't have anything to say, they feel like the shame or embarrassment about, I don't have a job, or yeah, or I don't know. And that was never my intent, was to do that, but I didn't know that that's how he would feel and take it. And this person was saying, well, when I went to Canada, I was so amazed that people would always be asking everybody, what are you doing now? Where are you working? How are you doing? We don't ask those questions here. Who knew? You know, and so it's being aware and trying to figure those things out, you know. So like, why are you getting uncomfortable? I don't know what's going on.
Great question right there.
Okay.
What inspired you to go overseas and help communities?
Well, it was my friend.
Repeat the question.
Pardon? Oh, what inspired me to go overseas and work in communities? And it was that woman that I met who said, would you be willing to do this? And I thought it sounded like a wonderful experience and opportunity. And then I got over there. I actually tease people that it's addictive, that once you start doing it, you don't want to stop. And so I said, unless you want an addiction, you probably shouldn't go. So the people who have gone with me, my friends, most of them have gone back or are planning to go back. So it's a really, I mean, that just speaks to the wonderfulness of the experience.
Time for one more question. There's one.
Yes?
For someone who's never traveled in their life, how would you convince them to travel overseas?
Okay. Well, I had never been anywhere outside of Canada and the U.S. until I was in my 40s. And And I always wanted to and had a real craving to. So how would I encourage somebody who's never traveled before to go overseas? I just say, go do it. You'll learn, you'll grow, you'll have amazing experiences. Connect with the people. I mean, I much prefer this way of traveling, where you actually go and you live and work in the community and get to know the people. It's a great way to travel. I constantly, while I'm over there, meeting young people, you know, who are doing volunteer experiences abroad. Some of them are doing practicums. Germany has a whole program where youth go for a whole year and live in different parts of Africa and has the experience of having a year in another culture, in another country. So it's an amazing experience.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.